Now, on the Georgia vote. And they're off. We have our very first entry into the 2026 governor's race, but don't expect Chris Carr to be the last.
Senator Jon Ossoff will face a stiff challenge in 2026. Why a vote this week in D.C. drew the attention of Republicans here in Georgia.
And a new leader for the Democratic caucus in the state Senate. We ask him why he believes the party can accomplish its goals in a Republican-dominated Capitol. All right now on the Georgia Vote.
From the 11 Alive studios, this is the Georgia Vote with Faith Jesse and Zach Merchant.
Well, welcome in. We are still weeks away from 2025, but in Georgia politics, we are already peeking ahead to 2026.
That's right. Things move very quickly in our state, and this week we got our very first entry into that 2026 governor's race. And this didn't really come as a surprise. Republican Chris Carr, the current state attorney general, he is running for the state's highest post. Governor Brian Kemp, he's term limited, and Carr is expected to be the first of many contenders.
Chris Carr's political career began 20 years ago when he joined forces with Senator Johnny Isakson, later becoming his chief of staff. Carr returned to Georgia in 2013 to serve as commissioner of the state's Department of Economic Development. In 2016, Governor Nathan Deal promoted Carr to attorney general to fill a vacancy. Carr then ran for re-election. He won a very close race in 2018 and had a more comfortable win in 2022. Carr's priorities as attorney general: fighting gang violence, consumer fraud, and human trafficking.
No matter where you are now in the state of Georgia, it isn't going to matter. You're going to have the state attorney general's office that's willing to go there. Going into court, making sure that those that are buying and selling are put behind bars.
Carr also jumped into the fray against what he felt was federal overreach, joining a lawsuit with 24 other attorneys general against a Biden administration mandate for employee vaccinations.
This is about whether or not the president of the United States has the authority to mandate companies and individuals to do this, and he does not.
Well, his name will not be the only one. More Republicans, they are expected to enter the race. They'll have a primary, and then the winner of that primary should feel pretty good. Republicans have won 6 straight governor's races here in Georgia. And within hours of Carr's decision, the Georgia Democratic Party, they had their response ready to go. The state party chair, Congresswoman Nikema Williams, said in reference to Carr, quote, "Georgians have already endured 8 years of this failed leadership, and we're looking forward to rejecting it in 2026 in favor of a strong Democratic governor who will put Georgians first."
The current occupant of the governor's mansion, Republican Brian Kemp, will have a major leadership role in 2025. Kemp will be the chair of the Republican Governors Association, which, not a big surprise, as he is currently the RGA vice chair. The Republican Governors Association is a group of 27 GOP governors dedicated to helping Republicans get elected to those offices across the country. Earlier this month, Republicans won 8 of the 11 governorships up for grabs. There is also a bipartisan push to get more aid to hurricane-ravaged parts of Georgia. Governor Kemp, along with Senators Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff, are urging Congress to approve a relief package for victims of Hurricane Helene. Tuesday, Governor Kemp sent a letter asking House and Senate committee members to approve more than $12 billion in aid. The next day, Senators Warnock and Ossoff pushed for action on President Biden's request for nearly $100 billion, which would help all Americans impacted by hurricanes and other disasters. Much of the damage from Helene in late September hit farms from South Georgia to Augusta.
Another event on Capitol Hill is getting some attention. Senators Ossoff and Warnock, they both voted in favor of 2 resolutions that would have blocked the sale of certain weapons to Israel. Senator Bernie Sanders orchestrated this move, saying that the Israeli government has waged an all-out war, not just against Hamas, but against the Palestinian people. But the resolutions, they failed, as many Democrats and all Republicans voted against it. Ossoff, the first Jewish senator from Georgia, compared his stance to one President Reagan took in 1982.
Not only did President Reagan personally call Israeli Prime Minister Begin and demand a halt to the bombing, and the bombing reportedly stopped within hours, but the American president then blocked the provision of cluster munitions to Israel out of concern that their use by the IDF was killing too many innocent people.
Georgia Republicans pouncing on this. State Party Chair Josh McCoon said it was, quote, stunning that the Democrat senators from Georgia would vote to cripple Israel's ability to defend itself. In his floor speech, Senator Ossoff said no foreign government, no matter how close an ally, is simply entitled to U.S. weapons with no strings attached. And change could be on the way for the often troubled Atlanta VA hospital. President-elect Donald Trump nominated a prominent Georgia veteran to lead the Veterans Administration. Doug Richards with the 11 Alive political team has more on how former Congressman Doug Collins could help locally.
All right, good morning, everybody.
There's no question that firsthand knowledge will enhance his opportunity to lead.
State Representative Mary Margaret Oliver is a Democrat who says Doug Collins is a Georgia Republican who impressed her.
He is a decent man with a legitimate veteran's career. And I found him very easy to work with and very knowledgeable about any task he took on. I'm pleased that President-elect Trump has made a good appointment.
The VA was the site of a nurses' protest in 2020 when they said the hospital wasn't sufficiently protecting workers against COVID. For years, patients have complained about wait times that have sometimes lasted months.
And they said that I had an underperforming heart, and they attributed it to Agent Orange. But the problem is it takes forever to get an appointment. Still don't have a doctor assigned to me in 3 years.
There have been patient suicides and issues with unsanitary conditions in an on-site living space. Collins is an Army chaplain who ran for the U.S. Senate in 2020 and lost to Kelly Loeffler, but became a Trump confidant.
I'm glad Doug Collins might be there if he's confirmed.
Oliver says her law practice and work in the legislature has highlighted the VA's ongoing challenges. She hopes Collins can make them a priority in D.C.
I believe that of the fact that he's a Georgian makes him more interested in that facility.
Doug Richards, 11 Alive News.
The man convicted of killing nursing student Laken Riley on the campus of UGA will spend the rest of his life in prison. Riley's death became a flashpoint in the national debate about immigration, an issue that was top of mind for many voters in November. Well, a judge found Jose Ibarra guilty on all counts. Riley's murder became a national story when officials said Ibarra was a Venezuelan citizen who entered the U.S. illegally in 2022. Well, after the verdict, Governor Brian Kemp said, quote, though we are glad justice has been delivered on behalf of Laken Riley, we continue to mourn her loss with her family and friends and know that she should still be here with us today. Open border policies failed Laken Riley, and today's verdict is a reminder that the safety of our communities must remain our #1 priority. President-elect Trump also released a statement saying he hopes for peace and closure to her family, but also added it's time to secure our border. Ibarra's sentence is life in prison without the possibility of parole, which is what prosecutors requested. Still to come, we go one-on-one with the Georgia Democrats' new leader in the Senate. We discuss his priorities for the new legislative session and how he plans to accomplish them in a Republican majority.
And later, we head to one of Atlanta's trendier and historic neighborhoods for a conversation about coffee, community, and justice. Our Voice of the Voter coming up. The presidential election is now over, but there is no break in the world of Georgia politics. A new state legislative session is set to begin in January, and Democratic lawmakers have a new leader for their caucus in the state Senate. In this week's Sunday Conversation, we sit down with Senate Minority Leader Harold Jones ahead of a big year under the Gold Dome. Looking ahead to the next session, what are your top priorities?
Our top priorities are, from kind of a macro standpoint, is continue to have Georgia be #1 state for business, but also the #1 state for families and for people. How do we meld those two together? So the question then becomes, legislatively, how do we do that? Obviously, one of our priorities is going to be Medicaid expansion, which we came close to doing last year. Another top priority will also be child care expenses, and then the third will also be like rent expenses and housing costs. I think those are the three things that matter to Georgians among many things. And so it's not necessarily within that order, but I think those are three things we really want to get our hands around.
This is coming at a time when in the state, Republicans control the governor's mansion, the lieutenant governor's office, and have majorities in both the state Senate and the state House. How do Democrats navigate through that and try to pursue your own legislative priorities still?
Well, one of the things we've been able to do is we have been able to pass legislation. Individual members have been able to pass legislation, and that's always caucus victories. I've been able to pass legislation too. I remember we had hate crimes. We had a great bipartisan effort a few years ago on hate crimes. Just last year, we had a bipartisan effort to try to get Medicaid expansion over the finish line. But it was the first time that the Affordable Care Act had been passed that it actually had a hearing in the state of Georgia. Unfortunately, it didn't pass by one vote. But the fact that we had that hearing, an open hearing, only fell by one vote, we're very encouraged by that. And we think we can take that over the finish line this year.
There are going to be people, too, who hear you say that and they think these legislative priorities sound good. Talking about bipartisanship sounds good, but when you get down to brass tacks politics, Democrats are in a position of relative weakness compared to Republicans here in the state. How do you actually get this stuff done?
We always want to make sure we get our bills passed. We want to make sure that happens. We want to get these big things that we're talking about passed. And while we're trying to do that, one of the things that would take place is we're going to bring that conversation more to the people of Georgia. So if we're not successful, and we hope to be successful, and our number one goal is to get these measures passed, make no mistake about that. But at the same time, the key also is going to be that now the people of Georgia, we think, are going to hear a lot of alternatives and say, these are things that we agree with, and we'd like to see them go forward.
Following Vice President Kamala Harris's loss in the general election, how do Democrats move forward?
Democrats in Georgia, it's easy for us to move forward because let's actually look at the numbers. As far as the state Senate is concerned, we stay where we are, still 23 members. As far as Vice President Harris is concerned, what a lot of people kind of forget, what we see is that she lost to all the swing states. We don't need to internalize that as Georgia Democrats. As far as our state is concerned, she lost by 115,000 votes. We still have 2 United States senators who are both Democrat. So what we have to do is make sure our message goes out clearer, not necessarily to make these wholesale changes that I see Democrats on the national level saying, oh, we need to make all of these particular changes. If she would have won, but only lost within 3 months in Georgia by 115,000 votes, we would say, you know what? It shows we're a purple state. I don't think that's changed at all.
There are those within your party, at the state level and particularly at the national level, who are taking a different approach and pretty loudly saying, this is a message sent by voters that tells us we need to change our priorities. It sounds like you have a different take on that.
What I've been telling my colleagues is, what we've been telling the people of Georgia are always our priorities. We've always talked about Medicaid expansion. We've always talked about child care issues. We're not going to change that. We're going to continue to move forward on those particular issues. Now, if persons on the national level believe that they've lost track with the American people, that's not us. That's not how we've been operating. We've always talked about those quote-unquote kitchen table issues that everybody's talking about now. But the Georgia State Senate has always been talking about those issues.
I feel a lot of local pride coming from you.
Yes.
Like a real state politics, local politics is where the power and the importance is at. Is that a mischaracterization, or am I hearing you right?
No, you're hearing me completely correct. Whether it's local government and also state. I tell people all the time, I know you enjoy when I go to the neighborhood association meeting. I know you enjoy watching the national and all the different personalities, but all the real stuff that's taking place in this country is happening at the state and local level.
And if you want to see more from our conversation, you can watch the extended interview with Senator Jones right now on 11 Live Plus. It is free to download on your favorite streaming device. And still ahead, we hear from the voice of the voter. But first, our Politics Roundtable with our strategists, Mark Roundtree and Fred Hicks, on the big political stories of the week. They are here next.
Time now for our political roundtable. Today we have Republican strategist and pollster Mark Roundtree, the founder and president of Landmark Communications, based right here in Atlanta, and Democratic strategist Fred Hicks, the founder and president of the Hicks Evaluation Group, 2 of our returning panelists. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Let's get into 2026. We're hearing from Chris Carr officially throwing his hat into the ring relatively early, though, Mark. What is the strategy here to do it this early, especially when he has a potential challenger from somebody, Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, who has been very vocal on the Trump campaign trail and with the MAGA wing of the party?
It's all money. He's going to focus his efforts on raising money, including over these Christmas holidays. And if he doesn't announce now, he has to wait until after the legislative session is over. He doesn't want to wait 6 months for that. And it's a smart move on his part. His real opponent here is actually not Burt Jones at this stage. It's probably going to be Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State. They're going to battle it out for a likely second-place position and a runoff against Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones.
With that primary, Fred, I just want to ask you this on the Democratic side. Could we expect to hear some contenders there? A big name that's been floated out is Lucy McBath.
Yeah. So I think that for Democrats, we'll see people wait until the early part of the new year, because right now we're trying to straighten out our state party situation, and we're also trying to settle on a new national party chair. So once the national and the state level has been settled, I think that's when you'll start seeing a few names to step out there. I think we need to look at Lucy McBath. I think we all should also be on the lookout for DeKalb CEO Michael Thurmond, whose term will end here soon. And I think also State Senator Sonia Halpern, as well as State Senator Jason Estevez.
Both of you said things that made me think, so we're going to get into this. Let's start with you, Fred. One name you left off of your potential list was Stacey Abrams. But there are a lot of people who are watching very closely to see what she does leading into 2026.
Question, where is Stacey Abrams?
Yeah, so Stacey Abrams is, of course, a name that you always have to consider. She's vaguely, flirted, so to speak, with the idea. But I think at this stage, unlike 4 years ago, Democrats are not going to sit back and wait for her and wait for her decision from her. People who want to run are going to run. And I think there are Democrats who look at what happened 4 years ago and regret not making that decision then. So if she decides to run, she will not have a clear path.
It'll be a competitive primary.
There's a lot of Stacey Abrams exhaustion, I think, as well. I think there are a lot of people that just kind of want to move on from the era of losing barely. And I think the Democrats I think she kind of knows that, too.
Well, it wasn't barely 4 years ago, or 2 years ago.
I was going to say, she definitely helped push the Democrats over.
And she has been a figure in Georgia politics for many years now. Yeah. Mark, one quick follow-up to you. You sort of very quickly said Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones isn't really going to be the challenger, the serious challenger to Chris Carr. I think a lot of people are going to hear that and disagree.
Well, no, I'm saying that the job here for Chris Carr is to get in a runoff. There are going to be significant candidates running for governor. It's unlikely anyone wins the first time out. I'm saying Burt Jones probably comes in first place at this stage. We've polled it at Landmark Communications, and he leads the race. He basically was leading, count it what you will, by about 32-20 for Carr, with Raffensperger in third place at about 12%. This was in August. And so I think the battle here right now is for second place. But you can't overlook that Congressman Buddy Carter from Savannah may also get in the race. He wants to run for something statewide, and he has a long history in this legislature. You probably get some of the fringe candidates that might run. Candace Taylor, the 1st Congressional District, has run before. And then a self-funding candidate may also get in this race as a potential serious candidate.
Gentlemen, I want to ask you this. Looking into Washington, a lot of appointments coming out from President-elect Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene is expected to be on a subcommittee working with the Department of Government Efficiency with the House, with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. What do you see her role in this, Mark?
I think the main thing she brings to the table 100% of the time is the ability to get attention for an effort. These reports aren't supposed to be done for, I think, 18 months, I think, is when is supposed to be submitted. This is sort of a long-term effort on their part. This isn't something that they're going to come out with in 3 weeks saying shut down half the government. They're trying to do this as a legitimate effort to sort of codify a reduction in the size of government, but her main role is going to be a communicator.
How could her involvement impact us here in Georgia?
Well, I think it's always good for a state to have a voice at the national table. And so from that angle, I think that's a good thing. And when you talk about cutting services, having someone from Georgia to maybe perhaps protect the Georgia interest is a very big thing there. But I got to tell you, 18 months from now, we're right in the middle of the 26 midterms. And so I'm not sure how effective this thing can be if they don't have control of the Senate at the end of 2026.
They will.
We'll see. We have to come back and talk about it.
We are going to see. We are going to see. We unfortunately are not going to see right now because we're out of time. But we are grateful for you all very much as always.
We're going to have to do an extended version of the panel one of these days. You guys stay with us. Our Voice of the Voter is next. We'll be right back.
The election is now over, but our work continues to make sure real Georgians remain at the center of the political conversation. After all, you still can't have the Georgia vote without Georgia voters. And in this week's Voice of the Voter, we head to Atlanta's Old Fourth Ward to meet coffee shop owner Kayla Bellman. Tell us where we are right now.
So we are at Think and a Filter, Old Fourth Ward.
When you see the store full, when you hand a cup of coffee to somebody, what does that do to you?
Obviously fills my cup. if you will. We get to be a part of people's day-to-day, right?
What's the secret to making a place like this work?
One of the things that Finca is grounded on is a mission statement, if you will, queer and caffeinated. And for us, that has meant centering the LGBTQ community, because we feel like if our needs are centered, as a result, everyone feels like home, right? When you lead with love and you lead with inclusion, then anyone from any walk of life feels like this space was built with them in mind, because it was.
We just had a big election. When you were casting your ballot, what was your biggest priority? What was your biggest worry?
My biggest priority was my community, environmental justice, and social justice.
And when you say social justice and environmental justice, what specifically is on your mind when you're thinking about that?
I am very much fearful for the EPA and the regulations that the Trump administration intends to cut back. I think it is very troubling, and I worry greatly for the future of the future generations. When it comes to social justice, one of the things that I think about is how my community, in particular the trans community, gets to or doesn't get to have trans elders. And the policies that the Trump administration gets to or wants to lead with are incredibly dangerous towards queer folks and trans folks in particular. So when I cast my ballot, I really thought critically about what was best for the next generation of Americans. My community, the LGBTQ community, is so strong and so united against these next steps. And here at Finca, we're so proud to be a part of the coalition building that will happen at the local level to ensure knowledge sharing, ensure access to care.
We always end on this. What are you most optimistic about?
I'm optimistic that the groundswell of local advocacy will work diligently to preserve rights, to ensure access to care, and I hope that the local leaders will work to continue to fight for our rights, continue to work to make our city better, healthier, and I'm optimistic that we can dull the impact of the next 4 years.
And that was shot at Kayla's second location. They're getting ready to open up a third soon.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you all so much for watching us today. We hope to see you back here Sunday, December 1st. We're off next week for another edition of the Georgia Vote. Have a great holiday.
We'll see you all then.